Hi, my name is Mark, and today I'd like to tell you more about Heroes of the Shire, this big game here, the game published by Shire Games, and thanks for sending it for review. I already did unboxing of this game, and you can find the link in the description of the video. Today I'd like to tell you more about the game plays, and my opinion on this game. The game was crowdfunded on Kickstarter. It was already sent to backers, but you can still buy this game on BackerKit. I will leave a link in the description of this video as well. The Heroes of the Shire is a game in which you will fight other players or enemies and bosses depending on the game mode you choose. You can play PvP, arena mode, where you fight with other players and you want to remove their health points to 0, reduce them. Or you can play a scenario mode where you will fight with different enemies and with different bosses. You will find loot. This is a cooperative game, or one versus many game, because one of the players can play as the bad guys. Now I will show you how the game plays and what the game is about. Not all the rules, because this game has got quite many rules, but I will show you enough so you get the idea how the game plays, and then I will tell you my opinion on this game. This is how Heroes of the Shire looks during a solo game, scenario solo game, but this is not the only way to play this game, because you can play this game in PvP mode, means player versus player, where you will fight with other players and you will try to reduce other players' health points to 0. You can play this game in a fully cooperative mode, where you will play scenarios. This is the left part here with all these hexes. You will walk around the map, you will discover new tiles, you will fight with bosses and with different monsters, and all players will work together to win the game. But you can also play this game in one versus many mode, which is still playing this cooperative game, but all the enemies and bosses will not be played by the game itself, but one player will play as the bad guys. So one player will decide which attacks the enemy are doing, what spells is the boss casting, and basically one player will play as all the enemies. But no matter which game mode you will choose, a lot of the basics are the same. Mostly your turn looks the same, and your player area is very similar in all play modes. Because the most important thing in this game is your hero board. There are 20 heroes, different heroes in the collector's edition of this game, and each hero plays completely different. They are very asymmetrical. If you have ever played Dice Throne, the board game, you know what I'm talking about. Each hero in this game has got different playstyle, different abilities, different spells. A lot of times players, different heroes, they have additional components like some pets and some tokens. Some heroes can change themselves into animals or demons, or they can have some allies to help them. They can have some additional cards and spells and everything. So each hero plays differently. When you choose a hero, you will get this quick reference sheet that basically tells you what is the play style of the given, of the chosen character, some tips and tricks, some spell combos. So this is very cool because it gives you some idea, it guides you in a way how to play your chosen hero. Of course, after you play the game a lot of times, many times you will not need this quick reference, but if you play it for the first time, it's very helpful. A player board, a hero board on the other side has got some description, some bio, complexity level, some basic stats. So before you choose your hero, you can read some story and you can decide if you want to play a complex character or not. Each hero class, apart from the hero board, gets this spell mastery board with some additional spells and abilities that you will be able to learn through the game. But let's go back to the hero board. A hero board contains a few different sections. Here are some abilities specific to your hero, like here are some paladin abilities, some passive abilities that are that can be used during the game. Here, for example, I deal additional damage with light spells, light element, and I get +4 base HP, my character and all other allies. And here you can set your life points. So it's 46, it's 42 +4 from this ability. Here you have an artwork, and here you have your basic stats: strength, intelligence, agility, and defense, and of course health points. Strength and intelligence is basically mostly used when you cast different spells, because depending on the value of strength and intelligence, your spells will be more powerful. Agility is important when in combat, because the turn order in each round is based on agility. The higher the agility, the quicker you will act in each round before other characters and enemies. Defense is important when you get some damage, when you are attacked, because anytime you get some attack damage, you reduce the damage by your defense value. So defense is kind of important because it prevents some damage that you would get from spells of your enemies or other players if you play PvP mode. Here you have permanent buffs area and some permanent conditions, because as you can see, you have these tokens +1, +4, +2, -1. And during the game, when you get different buffs to your stats, you will track them here. On the left side of this board, of this buffs area, this one here, you will track some permanent buffs. Buffs that you get from equipment, from loot, from some conditions in the game, or from leveling up. And these modifiers will stay with you for longer. Here you have the temporary buff area, and here you track all the modifiers that are only that will stay with you for a specific number of rounds. Here you have some numbers like 1, 2, 3, and let's say you get +2 to intelligence for 2 turns. You will place this token here on the column numbered 2. At the start of each turn of your character, all the tokens in the temporary buff area are moved to the left and to the left. So if it's here, it will last 3 rounds, then 2, then 1, and if you have to move the token from the first column of the temporary buff area, it gets removed from the game. So this is how you track different modifiers to your stat, to your health, and different conditions. Some stay longer and they are placed here. Some are temporary and only last a give specific number of rounds, and they are placed here. And this is a very important part of the game, because for example, if you get poisoned for 2 rounds, you will place this poison condition token here, and you will move this token to the left next turn and then remove it the following turn. So it means that you are not poisoned anymore. So you have to track all the modifiers and conditions, how long they last, how long they will be here, because if you have a boost to your, for example, strength, then maybe you would like to attack, but if you have a high defense for 2 or 3 rounds, then you may decide to cast support spells and for example heal or give some bonuses to your other allies instead of fighting. So depending on the buffs, you have to choose your strategy. The same with conditions. There are a lot of conditions in the game. You can see all the condition tokens here. There are almost 30 different conditions in the game. So some of them are permanent and some of them are temporary. Most of the conditions are negative to your hero. Apart from this buff area, permanent and temporary, the other very important part of your hero board are your spells. Here you have 10 spells. They are divided into support spells. The support spells are used to heal, are used to give some bonuses to your hero, to your allies, some negative effects, negative conditions on your enemies. And then you have attack spells that are basically used to deal damage to your opponents. Each character has got 10 different spells, support and attack spells. Apart from the spells on the hero board, you have 15 more spells on the spell mastery board, but I will talk about it a little later. Here on the hero board are all the spells that are available for you from the start of the game. In your turn, after you move all the tokens to the left, then you will lower the cooldown value of all the dice. I will talk about it in a second. Then you can choose to cast a spell. For example, this support spell, Second Embrace, will heal you. You have this green icon here, and it means an ally. The red icon means an enemy. A few of green people here, these are all allies or many allies, and here are many enemies. So the top part of each spell shows you who's the target of the spell. Then below you have the action of the spell, the outcome. So here it heals 3 HP. But for example, here you have plus intelligence. And when you have something like this, plus intelligence or plus strength, plus intelligence, it means that to this value below you will add your intelligence. So this healing spell will heal for 3 plus my intelligence. My intelligence is 5, so I will heal for 8 health points. Here is cooldown value, and this is a very important thing because all the spells, they have cooldown. Some of them have 0, but most of them have a specific number. So after you choose a spell like the Second Embrace, you will take a d6 die and set it to the number shown in this cooldown value on this spell. And this means that this spell will not be available for you for the next 3 rounds. So you can cast it, you can resolve the action from the spell, the result, but the spell will not be available for you for the next 3 rounds. Because at the start of each turn, after you upkeep all the tokens, move them to the left, then at the start of each turn you will lower the value of all the cooldown dice in your play area. So you will reduce 3 to 2, then the following round 2 to 1, and then when it's 1 and at the start of your turn you will take this die away and you can cast this spell again. Some spells have value, cooldown value 0, it means that you can cast them each turn of the game. When it's your turn, some have 6, the powerful spells cannot be cast over and over again. So this is a very cool, interesting and important mechanic in this game, the cooldown, because you have to cleverly choose the spells that you will cast, because after you cast a spell you have to wait for the spell to be ready again in 2, 3, 4, even 6 rounds. So if you combine the cooldown mechanic with all the temporary buffs, it makes a very interesting, technical puzzle how to optimize your board, your modifiers, and which spells to cast to be most efficient. And there is no dice rolling during combat. You exactly know how much damage you will deal, because if you deal 3 damage plus strength, here for example my strength is 6, 3 plus 6 it's 9, then you will subtract the defense of your enemy, and this is how many damage you will deal to your enemies. So the combat is not random at all. You use no die because you exactly know what are the different stats of your character and different modifiers, so we can calculate the damage or the effect of each spell. Apart from the spells on your hero board, you get the spell mastery board. Each class, this is a spell mastery board dedicated to Paladin. Each class has got a different spell mastery board, and here you have 15 additional spells that you can learn. I say spells because all the things that you do in your turn are called spells. You don't have any abilities, everything is called a spell. You have support spells and attack spells, but they all are spells. And on the spell mastery board, when you level up, you will get those yellow cubes, and you can spend those cubes to learn new spells. This is like a tree. You have 3 columns, and you when you have a power cube after leveling up, you can add it here to learn a new spell. Of course, you can do it in order. If you learned the spell number 1 in Divinity, you cannot learn this one, because first you have to learn the 2 spells in order. So if I have this power cube, I can learn the second spell in Divinity, second spell in Reinforcements, or the first one in Renewal. It's up to me. By leveling up and adding those cubes here, you will learn more and more different spells. So if you combine the 10 spells you know from the beginning of the game with the 15 spells that you can learn through spell masteries, you have 25 different spells. So each time you play the game, even if you play the same hero, learning different masteries will give you different feeling and give different playstyle in the game, and each hero has got completely different spells and completely different masteries. So the replay value in this game is really great, because with 20 heroes in the collector's edition, there are plenty strategies and tactics to discover. Apart from the hero board, you get this equipment board. You don't get equipment board in PvP mode, but if you play the cooperative mode, the scenario mode, you get this equipment board, and during the game you will find different equipment cards that you can place here. You can have one equipment for head, for chest, for weapon, for trinket, and they give you additional abilities that your hero can use, different bonuses. They are divided into light and heavy equipment, and depending on your character class, you can use a specific type of items. For example, Paladin can use, you have this H letter here, it means that Paladin can use heavy items. If you play solo with just one hero, at the start of the game you can pick one ally card, and this is like a simplified hero that will travel with you on your quest, and it's like additional character that you will have in the game that will also have it will have its turn, it will act, cast some spells. Each ally card has got some stats like strength, intelligence, agility, defense, HP. So this is like your sidekick that will help you during the game. If you play PvP, it's very easy. You have your player board, you have your spell mastery board. In PvP mode, you start with 5 cubes that you can arrange however you like. You can level up at the start of the game, and then you will fight with other players. Your goal is to reduce other players' health to 0. You can play one-on-one, or you can play a brawl with everyone fighting with each other, or you can divide all the players into teams. It's up to you. There are rules for all the different modes in the rulebook. But the other way to play the game is the scenario mode, the cooperative mode, and in the collector's edition you get 4 different scenarios. You have earth, fire, ice, and water. And depending which scenario you choose, you have different layout of this map here. You will have different hexes, you will have different action cards. Action cards are like the small story cards that you will encounter during the game. They give you some options, and depending on the option you choose, you will have different outcome. So they are like story cards, you can say. Depending on the chosen scenario, you will have different enemies. This is an earth scenario here, so you have different enemies that you will fight with, and they are dedicated to the earth scenario. So each scenario has got different action cards, different enemies, and in each scenario you will fight with different bosses. The goal of a scenario, of a cooperative game, is to defeat 3 bosses. Each scenario has got 3 of them, so if you have 4 scenarios in the full collector's edition, you have 12 different bosses. And bosses look like this. This is a boss board. It's very similar to hero board. Bosses, they have a lot of different attacks, abilities, passive abilities, different spells, permanent buffs, temporary buffs. It's very similar to player board. Apart from bosses, you have also these simple enemies. They look a little like allies. They have some basic stats, basic spells that they will cast. So you will fight with them when you encounter them, and then you have to defeat all 3 bosses in order to win a scenario. You can play even a campaign mode where you have to win all 4 scenarios, and your progress will stay from scenario to scenario. So let's say I have finished this Earth scenario, I have a character that is leveled up, I have some cool equipment, some buffs, some masteries that I have already learned, then I can play the second scenario, for example, Ice scenario, with the same character, just the next scenario will have a higher difficulty level because you have to adjust the difficulty to your leveled up characters. So this is kind of cool. As I said in the beginning, if you play this scenario mode, you can play against the game and the enemies and bosses will be like played by the game. There are some rules how to cast spells and how the enemies and boss behaves. But if one of the players wants to be the bad guys, this player can choose to play as the bad guys. And when you encounter enemies and when you encounter the boss, the evil player will choose which attacks to use, who is target of the attack, and so on. In the scenario mode, the goal is to reach 3 bosses that are represented by the standees. They are laying here on the board, so you can see them in the camera. Normally you have to stand, they will be standing. And you will walk through all these hexes. When you go to a hex that is placed face down, like for example this one, you will reveal it, and then you will take one of the exploration cards. And these exploration cards can give you different outcomes, like loot. Then the party leader receives 1 loot item from the deck. You have the loot deck, you will take the top card. Or you can keep exploring because nothing happened. Or trash mob, summon 2 trash mobs to battle and you will fight with enemies from the enemy deck. Or action card, it means take an action card from the deck and resolve it. As I said earlier, action cards look like this. When the exploration card tells you to take an action card, you take the top card from this deck, you read the top part of this story, you have 2 options, you choose one of the options or one of the 3 options, it depends on the card, and then you have an outcome. If you fight with enemies, the exploration card tells you how many enemies you have to take from this deck. You will place them on the table and you will fight with them. They have their agility, so they will be placed on the turn order card in order of their agility. They have some spells. If another player is playing as the bad guys, the player will choose which action, which attack to use and who is the target. Normally, when you play in a full cooperative mode, all enemies, they first try to cast the highest cooldown spell they have, and they try to attack the player who matches their highest attribute. So it's quite easy to use. You have to defeat the enemies. There are regular enemies, they have the brown border, and there are some elite enemies with the gold border. When you defeat regular enemies, they drop 1 loot item. If you defeat elite enemies, they drop 2 loot items. There are many items in this deck. The items, they have different rarity, so you can find different equipment during the game. If you go to a hex with a boss, you will have to fight the boss. For example, this is one of the bosses. And again, if another player plays at the bad guys, this player will decide which spell to use and what to do in boss turn. If you play against the game, it's very easy. The boss has got some abilities that you have to track as the party leader, as players. But when the boss will attack, you just roll a d10 die. You have 10 different spells, and depending on the outcome, you cast this spell. 6. This time, Ertasaurus will cast Aggressive Bite. Then you place a cooldown die if you have to. If you roll a die with a spell number that is already in the cooldown mode, you have to roll again and choose another spell, but it's very easy. The boss will fight just with another player. The boss will have permanent buffs, temporary buffs, different spells. So you have to defeat 3 bosses in order to win the game. Depending on the player count, you will also adjust the difficulty of a boss. The boss can have less or more health and different stats depending on your chosen difficulty. So this is the basic way to play the fully cooperative game against bosses. As I said, when the boss has its turn, you will roll a d10 die and choose the spell the boss is trying to cast. But there is a more clever way to play the game in a solo or cooperative game, because there is this true solo mode expansion. The name is a little misleading because normally true solo means that you can play with one hero, and you can play with just one hero even with the base game without this expansion, but this expansion adds, I would say, more clever and different behavior to boss fights. In this expansion, you will find 10 new allies, and this is really cool because normally in the base game you have just 4 allies, and you use allies if you play solo. These are your companions, and here you have 10 more allies, and depending on which one you choose, you will have different, the ally will have different abilities and spells, so we have more variety in allies. Also in this expansion you get 5 new action cards for each scenario. Normally you have 16 action cards, here you have 5 additional for each scenario, so we have more variety in the action cards. But apart from these allies and action cards, you get this deck of monster cards. They are divided into passive cards, into aggressive cards, and into defensive cards. The basic boss deck contains only the passive cards at the start of the game, and you shuffle this deck and you place it somewhere on the table. Then during the game, when you encounter enemies or encounter the boss, you will roll this die. It has the defense icon or aggressive icon, and depending on the roll of the die, you will add either an aggressive or defensive card to this passive deck of the boss in the game. So this deck will get modified depending on the dice roll when you meet different enemies, and this deck will get bigger and bigger, and you will add different cards to this deck, so each time you play the game, this deck will look a little different. And when you encounter a boss, and there is the boss turn, and you have to choose which spell to cast for the boss, instead of rolling a d10 die, you will take the top cards from this deck and resolve it. And this is really cool, because with these cards, the boss behaves more, you could say, clever. Like here it says, you may cast any spell that will benefit you the most in your current situation. So you choose the best spell for the boss. Or depending on the health points of the boss, it chooses different spell. Sometimes it summons enemies. Sometimes it casts a completely different spell from this card and not from the board. The boss can even miss the attack and hit you for 0. So this is quite cool. Instead of randomly rolling a d10 die, you can use this deck of cards to play for the boss. You can use it in solo, or you can use it in cooperative mode as well if you don't want to use the d10 die to choose spells for the boss. You can use this deck. I would say that this deck also makes the solo game a little easier, because normally when you roll a d10 die and you play solo with just one character, it's quite punishing and unforgiving, and it's very difficult to win with a boss. With this deck of cards, it's a little easier, because sometimes the boss, instead of using a powerful spell from his board, will use a simple card from here, or the boss can even miss an attack. So as I say that as a solo player, sometimes you have higher chance to survive the boss fight. But of course you can adjust the difficulty of the game to a hardcore one, and you will always lose the game. So basically this is how you play the game. Remember that no matter if you play the scenario mode or PvP mode or 1 versus many mode, the basics are the same, and the most important mechanics of this game is your player board with permanent buffs, temporary buffs, all the spells that you will cast, all the spell masteries that you will learn, and different combos that you will achieve depending on the character that you choose to play. So let me tell you what I think about Heroes of the Shire. So what are the pros of Heroes of the Shire? This is a really fun boss battler that feels like a more advanced and less random dice thrown. I say boss battler because you either fight with other players or bosses, but the combat is the main thing in this game, and this is really fun. And it reminds me of Dice Throne because all the players are asymmetrical, they have different abilities, and you have to learn how to play each character. Each character has got different combos, but it's not random, you don't roll any dice in combat, so it's kind of cool. And this game has amazing variety and replayability. especially in the collector's edition here, because the game was released in 2 editions, Fire and Ice and Earth and Water. Each one contains different characters and bosses, and there's this collector's edition here that combines both editions in one box. And in this box you have like 12 different bosses, 20 different characters, 4 different scenarios, a lot of variety. I also love that this game has got truly asymmetrical characters and bosses, and each one feels different. Each hero has got different board, different spells, different mastery spells, mastery board where you can learn new spells. Each character has got different tokens and cards and pets and allies and different mechanics. It's really nice. Each boss feels different. The bosses also use some boss specific components. So this is really cool. It's not like each hero only has got a few different spells, but the basics are the same. Playing each hero feels completely different. This is really nice. I like, there are some cool mechanics in this game, quite unique I would say. You have all this buffs mechanic where you have permanent buffs and temporary buffs, and you have to move the tokens to the left each round, and then they will disappear from your board. You have this cooldown mechanics that forces you to cast spells cleverly, because after you cast a powerful spell, the spell will not be available for a specific number of rounds depending on its cooldown. So it's really nice. Also, this game feels like it was created with passion and love, because Damien Senior, the creator of this game, is like he's probably the main person who created this game. It's like a one-man game, and you can feel that this is a project, his life project. He put a lot of work and effort and development into this game, and you can feel that this game is not like another game that a big publisher needs to publish in a given year to have a lot of releases in a portfolio. But this is a game created with love and passion, and you can really feel it when you play it. And the last thing is that there are different play modes, and this is fun. You have PvP mode, you have cooperative mode, and you have one versus many mode. So depending on your preferences, if you like cooperative games or competitive games, you can choose any play mode you want. The scenario mode plays longer because you have different bosses to fight with. If you play arena PvP mode, the game is quite faster because you just play with other players and you have to reduce their life points to 0, so this is quite fun. What are the cons of this game? This game is quite fiddly, and there are a lot of things that you have to track and remember, and sometimes it's easy to forget something because you have a lot of tokens and conditions and statuses and buffs and modifiers and spells. You have your allies, you have your character, you have the boss, different enemies. A lot of things to remember. You have a lot of tokens on the table, and sometimes it's easy to forget something or to miss an ability. It's easy to forget to maybe reduce the cooldown dice of a spell. I know, a lot of things to remember and to track. In my opinion, a little too many. The second con of this game is maybe I'm a little picky, but the production quality is not always great. For example, the player boards are on a thick cardboard. It's really cool. But the boss's board and the mastery boards are on a thin cardboard, and all the help reference sheets that you get for each character, they are printed on a really thin paper, and I don't like it. So the production quality is not always the best. Another thing that I don't really like is that some components in this game, they feel unnecessary, especially the whole map that you set up in each scenario, the hexes where you move around. I know that this mechanic was changed during Kickstarter because initially it was designed that when you go to a new hex and explore it, you reveal the hex, and you have some icons on the hex that show you if you have encountered an enemy or if you have to read the action card. Then they removed the symbols and they created this exploration deck. So each time you explore a new hex, you reveal a card from the exploration deck, and the card tells you what to do. So basically all the hexes, they feel unnecessary and they take a lot of table space, they take space in the box. The game could be maybe cheaper without all the hexes, and they don't add anything to the gameplay. I know that they have planned some expansions or expansion to this game where they will use all the hexes and they will have a use in the game. But for now, in my opinion, the map layout of the scenarios is unnecessary, and they could just have printed the layout of a scenario on a small board. You will have your party tracker to go from a node to a node and to a boss, just like in Slay the Spire video game where you had all the nodes that you move from one to another and then you go to a boss. And the last con, it depends on your preferences, but the game can be really punishing and unforgiving. It's a very difficult game, and a boss can wipe you out in a few rounds if you are unlucky. Especially, I think the game is punishing in solo mode when you play with one hero and one ally. I had a boss fight where the boss basically prevented me from casting most of my spells for the whole combat, and I was very defenseless. So using the true solo mode add-on helps. I think that because you get more allies and you have this deck of monster cards that you use for boss fights, and with those cards I think that the boss fight, at least in my experience, are a little easier and maybe a little easier, not easy, but easier to win. You have more chances to win and to succeed if you don't roll a random die for boss attacks, but you use the deck of cards. But the game is quite difficult, so if you like easy games, Heroes of the Spire is probably not a game for you. To wrap it up, it's a really interesting and cool game, I have to say. There are cons, it's not a perfect game, but I understand that this game was created by one person, so it's not easy to perfectly design everything. This is, I think, the first game from Damian Senior, and maybe the following expansions and games will be more polished. But this game reminds me a lot of the first Hexplored game or Gloom of Kilford game, games I really love, and they all were created by one person, and they were product of love and passion and and a dream to create a great board game. Both Hexplored and Gloom of Kilford, they were quite difficult to learn at first for me. I had to check a lot of things on BGG, just like Heroes of the Shire. But you can feel that this is a really nice and really well-developed game. It's not just one of 100 other games that are released each year. And this is really cool. You have cool mechanics, you have really a lot of asymmetrical character, a lot of replayability in this game. You just have to commit some time to learn this game, maybe to check some things on BGG, Board Game Geek if you are not sure, and it takes some time to learn the characters you want to play, because each character is asymmetrical. Probably the first game or two with a new hero will be quite difficult because you will have to learn combos. So this game requires you to invest some time in playing it, but I think it's really rewarding and interesting. And if you like fantasy games, if you like Dice Tron, if you like Hexplored games, you should definitely try it. As I said earlier, you can still get this game on BackerKit. I will leave a link in the description of this video. I know that there will be an expansion that will add new stuff to this game, will make this map more useful. I'm not sure what will be added. You can check the Kickstarter updates of Heroes of the Shire. They will probably publish some new ideas here, but all in all, this is a cool fantasy boss battling game, and if you like this type of games, you should really try it. Click the like button if you like the video, subscribe to my channel, visit me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. I will leave links in the description of this video. Thank you for watching, see you next time, bye.